Okay, we've started recording. So hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening at the public open house for planning applications at 253 and 255 Lake Driveway. The purpose of tonight's open house is to give you an overview of the applications and to hear your feedback. This open house is being conducted on the Zoom webinar platform and is scheduled between 7 and 9 p.m. And please note that the webinar is being recorded. My name is Stev Andis. I'm the manager of planning with the town, and I will be facilitating tonight's open house. With me in attendance is Eric Simpson. He is a development planner with the town, and he is also the one responsible for processing the applications that we'll be discussing tonight. From Ajax Council, we have Mayor Collier. We have Ward 3 Regional Councillor Joanne Dyes. We have Ward 3 Councillor Lisa Bauer, and we have Ward 1 Regional Councillor Marilyn Crawford. We also have the applicants for the proposed development, Stuart Turk with Your Home Developments and Trudy Peterson also with Your Home Developments. We also have some members of their consulting team. We have Scott Waterhouse with GHD, Clifford Corman from Kirkor Architects, Nazila Deldar from Kirkor Architects. And so the town is in receipt of and currently reviewing official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications for 253 and 255 Lake Driveway, which along with supporting reports and studies have been posted on the town's website on the town's IMO page. Tonight, we're going to start with a presentation from Eric Simpson, who will provide an overview of the applications and explain some of the site context. Then we'll go to a presentation from the applicants, consultants, who will present the proposed development. Following this, we'll open it up to the floor to any attendee who wants to speak or ask questions about the proposed development. As attendees, your mics your mics and cameras are automatically disabled. If you wish to ask a question of the town or consultants, please raise your hand by using the hand icon at the bottom of your screen, and I will enable your microphone to speak. You'll receive a pop-up message advising you that you've been given permission to unmute. And then after you have asked your questions, I will disable your microphone before moving on to the next speaker. Your video, however, will remain disabled throughout the open house. To respect everyone's time and to get to as many people as possible within the allotted time for this open house, I request that you keep your comments as succinct as possible. If we have a lot of attendees that are wishing to speak, I may limit you to 5 minutes just to ensure we get to everyone. We also encourage you to type your comments into the Q&A. There is a button at the bottom of your screen, as we may not be able to get to everyone within the allotted time. We'll be gathering all the typed comments from the Q&A and provide written responses, which will be posted on the project page, on the IMO page for this project. This is to use our time during this open house for people who wish to speak. If there is time left over, we can go to some of the typed questions and answer them live. As I mentioned, this open house is being recorded and it will be posted on the IMO page next week for anyone else who was unable to attend. We will continue to accept your comments after this meeting, so please feel free to provide additional comments in writing on the IMO page or via email to Eric, and his contact information is on the IMO page. As mentioned, please note that this meeting is being recorded. And so now I will turn it over to Eric for the presentations.
Thanks, Steph. Can you just share the presentation? Okay, great. All right, I'm assuming everyone can see that. So thank you. As Steph indicated, my name is Eric Simpson, development planner with the town of Ajax. My presentation will provide an overview of the development applications that have been submitted. Next slide. So the subject lands currently consist of two separate properties, 253 Lake Driveway West and 255 Lake Driveway West. The subject lands are located on the north side or the northwest side of Lake Driveway West, west of Westney Road South. To the west of the subject lands is environmentally sensitive lands associated with the Duffins Creek. Such lands consist of a woodlot and a wetland complex. To the north is an employment area serviced by Green Court. To the east is a commercial plaza known as the Discovery Bay Plaza. To the south and east is an existing low-density residential area. The applicant is proposing the development of an 8-story residential building and a 3-story stacked townhouse dwelling block for a total of 178 dwelling units, 1 level of underground parking and a partial level of structured parking for a total of 222 parking spaces are proposed to accommodate the development. Outdoor amenity space in the form of a green roof is proposed on top of the structured parking level. One site access onto Lake Driveway West along the western limits of the subject lands is proposed to service the development. As you can see from the image above, the proposed 8-story building is situated in the northeast portion of the subject lands, and the proposed 3-story stacked townhouse dwelling block is situated in the southwest portion of the subject lands. The applicant's architect, Kirker Architects, will provide more of a detailed overview in their presentation. This is just another rendering of the development proposal. Next slide. So the existing policy framework. So the subject lands are currently designated neighborhood center, which is shown in the red hatching, and low density residential, which is shown in yellow, in the town's official plan. More specifically, 255 Lake Driveway West is designated as neighborhood center, and 253 is designated as low density residential. The environmentally sensitive lands to the west are designated as environmental protection, which is shown in green. The employment area to the north is designated as general employment, which is shown in blue. The commercial plaza to the east is also designated neighborhood center, and the existing residential area to the south and east is designated low density residential. Lake Driveway West is identified as a collector road, and Westney Road South is identified as a type C arterial road. Both of these types of roads, collectors and arterial roads, are intended to accommodate higher volumes of traffic than a local road. And an example of a local road would be Walker Crescent. The neighborhood center designation permits commercial uses, such as but not limited to retail stores, personal service establishments, restaurants, offices, and residential uses, such as apartment dwellings on the upper floors of a mixed-use building. Standalone residential uses are not permitted. The neighborhood center designation permits a maximum building height of 6 stories and requires a minimum building height of 2 stories. So the existing zoning framework. The subject lands are currently zoned as follows in the town's zoning bylaw. 253 Lake Driveway West is zoned as institutional A, that's I-A zone, and it's subject to exception 11 in the town's zoning bylaw. This is shown in the brown hatching. 255 Lake Driveway West is zoned as local commercial, which is the LC zone, which is shown in blue. The the adjacent lands as well are zoned in accordance with the underlying official plan designations that I just outlined. So the IA zone permits a variety of different institutional and community uses and permits a nursing home. No other forms of residential uses are permitted. Exception 11 is a result of a previous zoning bylaw amendment and permits an office as an additional use on the property. The LC zone permits a variety of different commercial uses in accordance with the neighborhood center designation and permits an apartment dwelling on the upper floors of mixed-use buildings. Once again, standalone residential uses are not permitted. The development standards, for example, maximum building height and minimum building setbacks of the IA and the LC zones were not intended for a multi-residential development, which has been proposed. The following applications have been submitted to the town by Your Home Developments: an official plan amendment application and a zoning bylaw amendment application. The purpose of the official plan amendment application is to redesignate the subject lands to a site-specific neighborhood center designation to increase the maximum permitted building height and to permit additional uses. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject lands to a site-specific local commercial zone to permit additional uses and set site-specific development standards to facilitate the proposed development. The future submission of a site plan application will also be required. The purpose of the site plan application is to examine the design and the technical aspects of the proposed development. Depending on the proposed tenure of the development, and to clarify whether it will be rental or condominium tenure, a future submission of a draft plan of condominium application may also be required. Scott Waterhouse of GHD will provide a more detailed overview of the proposed amendments. So the following materials have been submitted in support of the applications. This includes a planning rationale report, a commercial needs analysis, archaeological assessment, an environmental impact study, a functional servicing and stormwater management report, hydrogeological assessment, geotechnical investigation, a noise study, a phase 1 environmental site assessment, a traffic impact and parking study, and a tree inventory and preservation plan. In addition to these materials, various drawings such as a site plan, floor plans, elevations have also been submitted. Town staff, regional staff, and Toronto Norwegian Conservation Authority, that's the TRCA, have reviewed these materials in detail and provided comments on such materials to the applicant to address. It's anticipated that a second submission of materials will be provided and that at such time, the formal site plan application will also be submitted, which will include additional documents such as detailed architectural, landscaping, engineering drawings, a sun shadow study, waste management details, and a construction management plan, for example. Scott Waterhouse will also go into a little more details on the status of the applications. The submitted materials provide various recommendations and conclusions relating to the potential impacts of the development proposal on the surrounding area. The environmental impact study concludes the following. An existing wetland has been identified on the subject lands. This wetland was previously designated as a portion of the larger Lower Duffins Creek wetland complex to the west and is considered provincially significant. However, due to the location of such and the previous site disturbance that occurred on site, such wetland was removed of its provincial significance by the Ministry of Natural Resources in early 2020. As a result of the development proposal, the existing wetland is proposed to be removed. A detailed evaluation of this wetland in coordination with the TRCA is required in order to determine the amount of compensation necessary. On-site restoration is unlikely to be feasible, and as such, off-site restoration or compensation has been recommended. For example, compensation could be provided in the form of assistance in the restoration of marsh habitats in the adjacent wetland complex. The adjacent significant woodland to the west is proposed to be protected with a 10-meter vegetation protection zone, which is in accordance with our official plan policies. This area will be required to be planted in new vegetation and will have to be conveyed to public ownership. In addition to that, it will be rezoned and redesignated to the environmental protection zone and designation. And this is in order to secure for the long-term protection of such. The traffic impact study concludes the following. The proposed development is expected to generate 64 net trips. This includes 17 inbound trips and 47 outbound trips during the AM peak periods, and 78 net trips, which includes 48 inbound and 30 outbound trips during the PM peak periods. As a result, the traffic impacts to the existing road network from the development proposal are considered to be low. During AM and PM peak periods, the Westney Road South and Lake Driveway intersection, which is the closest signalized intersection, as well as the proposed site access and Lake Driveway West intersection, will operate at acceptable levels of service. Land use compatibility. In order to mitigate impacts from proposed building heights and to ensure that light, view, and privacy is maintained for adjacent low-rise residential neighborhoods, new developments are required to be set below a 45-degree angular plane, which is measured from the property line of the nearest low-density residential area. Drawings have been submitted to demonstrate that the 45-degree angular plane has been met. Please note that the adjacent property to the south is a town-owned parcel of land that provides trail access, which is why the 45-degree angular plane has been measured from the property line of the nearest residential home, which is 241 Lake Driveway West. In addition, Lake Driveway West separates the development proposal from the other surrounding low-density residential properties. This concludes my presentation for tonight. We will now proceed with the presentation from the applicant. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. I'm just trying to navigate here. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. My name is Scott Waterhouse with GHD, Consulting Planners and Engineers. I wanted to thank everyone attending tonight's open house, and certainly thank you to staff, members of council, and members of the public that are with us this evening. As I mentioned, I'm with GHD, and I am the consultant planner for Your Home Developments for the proposed development 253 and 255 Lake Driveway West. Now, firstly, I just wanted to very briefly, introduce Your Home Developments to the South Ajax neighborhood. Your Home Developments has been building in the GTA since the early 1990s and has built several successful residential developments throughout the GTA in Brampton, Mississauga, and Toronto, and have recently built a couple of new developments in the town of Ajax. And a couple of the images on the screen before you here give a sense of the recent developments in Ajax. The one at the top right there, what's called the Marquee Towns, that's the one at Old Harwood and Chapman Drive that is built and constructed. The other two referenced as Hilltop Towns and Lake Walk Towns are currently in the construction and final approval phases. And just at the bottom left on the screen there is another example of more of a mid-rise condominium development recently completed by Your Home Developments in the city of Toronto. I'm just going to jump ahead here if I can. And I was going to talk about some of the policy framework, but Eric did such a great job. I won't repeat what he said, but Eric did mention that in terms of the applications that have been applied for, there's two applications. One is an official plan amendment application, and the second is a zoning bylaw amendment application. So I won't repeat the current designations in detail from what Eric said, but I'll just give everyone a very brief overview of the official plan amendments that have been requested or applied for, and the zoning amendments as well. So the proposed official plan amendments can kind of be categorized into three groups, if I call them that. So as Eric mentioned, the current neighborhood commercial designation that applies to 255 Lake Driveway West permits apartments, but it also requires ground floor commercial use. So part of our official plan amendment application is to remove the requirement for the ground floor commercial use and permit essentially a residential only apartment building within that designation. And the second component of the official plan amendment, as Eric mentioned, he was referencing about the maximum building height within the neighborhood center designation as being 6 stories. So the second component of the official plan amendment is seeking to increase the height, maximum height to 8 stories within the neighborhood center designation. And then the last amendment being sought, as Eric mentioned, 253 Lake Driveway West, which is the more southerly, smaller piece, is currently designated low density residential. So the amendment would be seeking to redesignate that from low density residential to neighborhood center, and then also permit the stacked townhouses as a permitted residential built form in that designation. You would have seen the slide earlier that Eric presented in terms of the site plan. It had the main sort of apartment building, but also 3-story stacked townhouses, generally on the property of 253 Lake Driveway West. So those are essentially the main official plan amendments being sought or that are required. Just in summary, the neighborhood center designation does permit apartments, but the main point of the amendment is to remove the ground floor commercial component requirement. So I will just jump to, and I know Eric spoke to the zoning context in terms of what the current zoning zones are for the two properties, because they're both have different zones now and what the permitted uses are as well. So I won't repeat that. But I just want to highlight for everyone a few more details in terms of what the proposed zoning amendments are seeking to do. So as applicable to 253 Lake Driveway West, seeking to rezone it from the institutional zone that Eric mentioned to a local commercial zone, and also include site-specific exception to permit the intended built form, being the townhouses and the apartment portion, and also establish certain development standards to permit the intended design. And when I reference development standards, I'm referring to, say, building setbacks to property boundaries, lot coverage, height, those sort of standards that you might find in a typical zoning bylaw. And then for 255 Lake Driveway West, we'd be seeking to retain the current local commercial zoning that applies there, but again, include site-specific exceptions to permit the intended built form. And in that case, primarily the built form that we'd be seeking is the apartment building without the ground floor commercial component. And also establish, again, certain development standards to permit the intended design. And I think Eric mentioned or kind of spoke to this, there's a portion of the property, and you'll see it on the site plan that you'll see in a few minutes from Cliff and Nazila, partially vegetated along the western boundary. And there was, and that's part of sort of the larger environmental area to the west. So the zoning amendment would also be seeking to zone that area plus a typical buffer area as required by the Conservation Authority to an environmental protection zone, which is what the environmental lands to the west are currently zoned that are owned by the municipality, I believe. So that concludes my sort of planning overview in terms of the official plan amendments that are being sought, plus the zoning bylaw amendments. And before I hand it off to Cliff and Nazila to provide some of the visuals of what the design is going to look like and how it has responded to some of the local context, Eric was just mentioning about where we are in the process, and I can just maybe add for people. We made applications last year for this, and obviously tonight is one of the steps involved in our review process, seeking comments from the public. We are looking to make sort of in the next submission in response to some of the, what I call technical comments received from the town, from the Conservation Authority, from the region in the next few weeks, and also in response to hearing some of the comments at tonight's public open house. So that's kind of where we are in the process. There may be questions later in their conversation this evening about when it might come back in front of committee and council, but that's where we are now. It's currently under review, as Eric said, but we're looking to make our next submission in the coming weeks. So with that, I will conclude my planning overview, and I'll hand it off to Cliff and Nazila, who will provide a bit of more insight and detail in terms of the proposed design, its context, and how it's kind of responded to the adjacent land uses there.
Okay, thank you, Eric. If you can go to the first slide. My name is Clifford Corman. I'm senior partner and founder of Kurkor Architects and Planners, and doing these type of projects for about 40 years. This is about my second major project for your home developments, and we do attest to the fact that they're an excellent quality developer and an excellent quality builder, and sort of pleased to be involved in this project. And as Scott mentioned, we've started looking at this project and created a number of different ideas, which we're going to present to you tonight to help do a larger scale development in this neighborhood that we believe will fit nicely into the context of the site. So you can see from the aerial photo here, there's our site. We have the narrow portion to the south, which connects to your driveway, and then it goes deeper into the lot, which is next to the environmental protection area, and then bounded by the retail plaza, Discovery Plaza, and the industrial to the north. So that's sort of the context of the site. Next slide. So obviously we go down to the site and we study how the site is viewed, looking north on the site from Lake Drive to our site. What's the vista line, where the existing houses are, what the character of the street is. Next slide. Of course, we look at it coming from the other way. You can see to the right where our project is going to be, you have the plaza. You have a fairly dense tree line, and where the word says site, this is where we're going to set our project into. And you'll see when we get to the plans, what we've done is we've set our building design back from where it says site into the site, so that the effect of the height and the density of the project is set deep into the project. And we've actually looked to enhance the street line with our development. Next slide, please. So this is the site plan. So as you can see in the site plan, at the north side of our site, we have our entrance driveway adjacent to the retail plaza. Again, trying to be as far away from any residential driveways as possible. You'll see a little bit south of that, you'll see a little L shape that comes out from the main building. That's a one-story entrance feature. So we've set the entrance feature opposite the street, parallel to the road. So it's a very good location for the entrance of pedestrian access to the site. You also see, while we call it an 8-story building, there's a large 6-story portion and then an 8-story portion. And the 6-story portion is set back significantly from the street and also step back on the perimeter. So the building goes as the base, it has a mid-rise to 6 stories, it has a significant step back and terraces to the 8th floor, again, reducing its impact and working hard to fit into the transition of the site. You also see next to the property owned by the town of Ajax, the landscape walkway there, that's where we set our stacked townhomes. So we're keeping low rise adjacent to low rise and entrance features and low rise adjacent to the street. And the density is pushed back in towards the industrial and to the deep part of the retail plaza. You'll also see a very large landscape courtyard in the site. So while we do have some at-grade parking, we've covered it with a full landscape deck, gazebo, and design features. And at the west end of the property, you'll see what Scott referred to as that 10-meter buffer zone. So we're giving up a buffer zone to the site to be replanted and be environmentally protected to the woodlot and valley lands to the west. So again, part of developing the site is to protect the woodlot and the environmental sensitive area and to stay back from this zone. So in this nature, I think the building has a very interesting way that it sets into the property. Next slide, please. So this is a landscape plan. So on the landscape plan, you'll see how we've done street front planting, double row of street planting at the entrance feature. It's a very nice warm landscape entrance feature. That we've put up perimeter landscaping against the property owned by the town of Ajax, so that we have a nice buffer to the landscape area. And those entrances to those townhomes come off that sidewalk. You'll also see there's a sidewalk loop that wraps around the whole property, so people can walk right around the property and adjacent to the buffer zone and the landscape woodlot. You'll see that we also have set the driveway back on the north away from the retail plaza site to give it also a landscape buffer. And of course, we have a drop off for some short-term vehicular drop off on site. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, we've covered this very, very nice west-facing, south and west-facing deck with a beautiful private outdoor amenity area, so that we have an excellent amenity area on site, fully developed for the apartments on the project. This will have a play area, it'll have a quiet area, we'll have barbecue and gazebo areas, and a lookout from the gazebo, which faces the west and to the woodlot. So it has a very nice raised feature. So you get sort of a terracing waterfall effect coming down the building, across the outdoor amenity, down to grade and into the woodlot. Next slide, please. So this is just our unit matrix. This is a nice scale family development. We only have 35% or 36% one bedrooms, 54% two bedroom and dens, and 10% three bedrooms. So it's a nice cross section of unit sizes and unit types, which we think is a family style building. Next slide, please. So you can see we have one level of underground parking, float within the structure of the building with good setbacks to the perimeter, so we keep and retain all the excavation and structure within the site limits. Next slide. So on the ground floor plan in the yellow where it says lobby, you can see how we've set the building back. We have this nice landscape walkway into the building. We have a large grand lobby and amenity area beside the building. We have indoor storage and bicycle lockers. Like all good developments, our driveway to parking goes into the building. You don't see it, you don't hear it. It's tucked in at the north end of the building. Our loading dock is also an internal loading dock with an internal garbage holding and storage area, which will be refrigerated, traps smell and noise. And we have some surface parking there that backs onto the ground floor plan and to the lower level of the townhomes. Next slide, please. As we move up into the building, we have the unit layouts, which goes to typical L-shaped building up to the 6th floor. We have our stacked back-to-back townhomes, which enter again off the driveway, off the walkway to the south and east. And we have our landscape terrace. Next slide, please. And again, moves up to our typical floor plans. Next slide, please. And this is very important. Because we're trying to, we're seeking approval of an 8-story building versus 6, we have stepped the 7th and 8th floors significantly back from the 6th floor with a roofed terrace. So the distance from the street to the property line to the lobby to the 6th story steps back an additional 12 meters to the 8th floor. And you can also see the 8th floor is stepped back from the perimeter edge of the building. So when we get to the perspective of the building from grade, this dematerializes or makes the top of the building recede and step back as we go up in height. And you'll see we also change materials to make it diminish even further, to reduce its impact. Next slide, please. So as Eric showed earlier, from the residential house at 241, the 45-degree angular plane, we are significantly below that. You can see our 3-story stacked townhouses in yellow on the right. Then you'll see our rise to 6 stories and another 12-meter step back to only a 6-meter rise to the 7th and 8th floor. So you can see how the building is stepped into the site, stepped back, and all parking is interior to the site and covered. Next slide, please. So in the view of the project, this is a very contemporary building. It's a cross between traditional and contemporary. We're using stone at the base. We're using dark masonry brick. And as the building moves up in height, we're using lighter aluminum siding and panels to try and create this base, middle, and top to a project, very classic architectural design. And of course, we incorporate the same materials into the townhomes. So the main frames of the building are masonry. There is stone accents at the base and the lobby feature. And then there's a diminished 7th and 8th floor, which you can see by the perspective will look further back because they're set back from the edges of the 6th floor and step back significantly from the street line on the east side. Last slide, please. So then this is the interior courtyard, which is not seen from the street, but in terms of creating an amenity to the development and character for the project, and to show that all services will be well received at grade on the site. This terrace access grade, it's a lovely landscape space. It's wrapped by the apartment building on 2 sides and the townhouses on the 3rd side, and it opens up to the left into the view of the environmentally sensitive forested area. So we think this will be a very, very elegant apartment building. And as you can see, the 6th story steps back to a lighter 2 stories at the top, giving the base, middle, top, and the top of this project to gain the extra 2 stories does recede in the perspective line, and we believe creates no impact additional to the project. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric, Scott, and Clifford for your presentations. I do apologize. There seems to have been a little bit of a technical difficulty with the second presentation. But we can always bring up particular slides or drawings if there are specific questions about that, and we'll be able to bring those up full screen. So this is where we're going to open it up to all the attendees. If you have a question, please click on the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen, and I will unmute your microphone. Okay, so our first person to have their hand up is David. Okay, David, you should be able to unmute yourself and ask your question.
My question regards visitor parking spaces. All parking is underground. How many visitor spaces are being reserved?
I could maybe answer that, Eric. I know certainly the design would accommodate a ratio of 0.25 visitor spaces per unit. In it, so that's just for visitor in addition to the resident component, but a ratio of 0.25 spaces per unit, which is in line with the town's zoning bylaw and the town's requirements for visitor parkings for residential developments.
It's Clifford here. Just to add on to what Scott says. So when we do these buildings that have parking for visitors, really at grade on this one, though it's covered, you drive into the visitor areas, you drive into a safe and secure visitor parking area at the 0.25 spaces per unit. So if there's 170 units, you're going to have, I forget the number, but it's 25% of those spaces will be for the public, for visitors. And we end up fencing those spaces off into a safe and secure area, allowing them to access the lobby, and then have a separate gateway into the apartment parking area.
Okay, thank you. David, if there's nothing further, I will move on to the next person. The next person is Janet. Janet.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation this evening. Appreciate it. I wondered if I just wanted to confirm, because I wasn't sure, and my apologies if I missed it. Are we talking about a condominium development or rental accommodation? And what sort of economic range, if I can put it that way, would you be anticipating that the apartment building and the townhomes would be falling into?
Stuart, I don't know if you're able to speak to that a little bit in terms of what the current thoughts are on tenure.
Tenure at this stage of the game looks like it's going to be most likely a condo project, luxury tenure, and as far as pricing goes, we're not there. I mean, this has to go out for tender, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to comment on that.
Okay, thank you. Janet, did you have anything further?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next person is John. John, you should be able to unmute and ask your question.
Is it John Peacock?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I actually have several questions. I hope that it will help with other people. One is around, like I saw they did a pretty extensive traffic survey. One of the issues around traffic is people cutting through Giant Tiger parking lot. That's a pedestrian safety issue. I see that as it's going to increase if you have a significant amount of more traffic. Has that been looked at?
So the submitted traffic study more so looks at the estimated amount of traffic that will be generated from this proposal, and then its impact on the existing road network. So more so, can the streets around it accommodate it? Can the intersections operate at an acceptable level? It wouldn't be really looking at, you know, vehicles passing through a plaza.
So this is something that happens currently, and I can only see it increasing in the future.
Okay, we'll take note of that comment.
Okay, another item is around, they did a traffic assessment, but I don't see where they did assessments of like things like sewage, water pressure, electrical needs. How are those being addressed?
Yeah, so not everything was posted on the IMO page. We can definitely do so. There was a lot more technical documents, as I mentioned in my presentation. In terms of servicing, they did do a functional servicing report, which is required for all developments of this scale. It doesn't identify any servicing constraints. There's existing sanitary sewer and water servicing capacity to service this development. It also deals with stormwater. There's various stormwater strategies that would have to be implemented in order to accommodate this development proposal. In terms of electrical, that's a very nitty-gritty detail that once they do submit a site plan application, that we'd be looking at that stage.
Because there's, you know, we've just got the electrical needs down our street addressed, which has made things a lot more reliable. It hasn't been in the past. Sewage, we used to have that smell every night at about 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. They've addressed that on Leslie Road with the big, I don't know, they put in some cisterns and other containers there that seem to have taken care of that. I'd hate to have all that be undone by this, the load that this is going to put on the system.
No, yeah, absolutely.
The other, another big issue is my property value. Like every real estate person that I've spoken with is of the opinion that this is really going to hurt my property value. What's going to be done about that?
I can't really comment on the value of that. I don't know if your home developments have had other similar situations, if they think that's common, or if when they've built something, you know, maybe it had the complete opposite effect. I'm not sure if you guys want to share on that, maybe.
Stuart, I don't know if you have any input, but I'm positive that the previous developments that your home has done in terms of the design has done nothing but increase property values. I'm sure that's your experience, but I don't know if you have anything just to add to that.
I agree with you 100%, Scott. I would say on 100% of our developments, values overall have gone up from the time that we started.
I would imagine your establishments, the values would go up, but the surrounding neighborhood, all of a sudden we get an 8-story building. I don't see that as being going to help my property values at all.
I appreciate your feelings in regard to value, John. I would respectfully disagree. When I talk values, I talk overall community. And our studies show that there's a huge pent-up demand for a move down market of especially the seniors area that are looking for a type of housing that doesn't have stairs, and they're prepared to spend good money for a high-end product that we intend to build. So, I mean, I can't make any guarantees, but so far we're batting 100. Values overall in the community will definitely go up as this program goes forward.
Is this intended to be seniors only moving into this condos, or?
No, we don't discriminate, but the market shows that there's definitely a large move down pent up demand for high-end condominium living.
Another item is around the notifications of this. Why was it only 120 meters from the site? Like an 8-story building is going to affect a lot more than 120 meters away from this site. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, so under the Planning Act, that's the protocol that we follow. It requires that when you give notice for these types of applications that you basically draw a radius that's 120 meters from the subject lands. So everyone that would have received the mail, it was because they were within that 120 meters. We don't have another protocol, so this is the standard we stick to. I understand with COVID, things may be more difficult, mail doesn't come on time, but unfortunately that is the standard that we've always gone with, and it's what we've continued to do.
I think it should be pretty much all of Walker Street and Vale and Lake Drive. A significant amount of Lake Drive should have been informed of this situation so that they could have input on it. That's just a comment that I'd like to make. Another item is if this goes ahead and there is all this parking, is the parking garage going to have electrical outlets to take care of electric cars of the future?
It's Cliff here. Yes, absolutely. We put a number of vehicle charging stations into every one of these buildings today.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I've got for now.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Next person is Nadine. Nadine, you should be able to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. There was quite a bit of mention about a 45-degree angle that was measured from 251 Lake Driveway, which would be closer, from what I understand, to the 2-story stacked townhomes. And has there also been measurement that would angle from the peak of the 8 stories that would impact 51 Walker Crescent, as well as 248 Lake Driveway?
So the way the 45 works is it's measured from the property line. So when you factor in the road, Lake Driveway, that's separating, Walker Crescent and this property, that's already at a 25 to 27 meter right-of-way width. So when you factor in that, plus the setbacks of this building, plus the setback of a home on Walker or whatever, it would be underneath that 45. That's not to say that you wouldn't be able to see, the peak of the building. It's just if you were to look at it from a diagram, it would be well underneath that 45.
So just to put it in plain terms, essentially someone on their balcony on the 8th story won't be able to look into backyards?
I'm sure they'd be able to see. If you're up that much higher, you're going to be able to see something. But the
Right, so
intent is,
how are we ensuring privacy of people's backyards if they can see?
well, the reality is there's always going to be, some privacy invasion. Like there's no possible way to prevent that. If you have a taller building in the area, you're going to oversee some stuff. But when we have this 45, it setbacks the building further. You have also the taller part of the building in the furthest corner from the street in the northeast corner. So it's things like that, the design of it, the siting of it, the setbacks that we can try to work with to mitigate the impacts of the height. But definitely there is going to be some privacy concerns. And the reality is that could happen just with your own neighbor, like with single detached.
My own neighbor isn't at 8 stories, so I don't think it would necessarily be that, but I think that some stuff is our full backyard. So when we're looking at an 8-story building imposing on our entire privacy of our backyard, I'm definitely concerned about that. And as we move on to traffic reporting, was the traffic reporting taking into account home deliveries and the frequency of Uber and Amazon deliveries, et cetera? Or was it just those cars going to and from that were parked at that establishment?
So traffic studies just look at the peak hours for traffic. So that'd be basically on existing traffic counts, the traffic that happens in that area at the peak hours. So this is on weekdays, like in the AM and the PM when people are going and coming from work. And then it adds the estimated traffic that this would generate, and it looks at those numbers. So I mean, it's not going to capture every single situation, you know, someone getting dropped off. It just kind of generalizes and it looks at what is considered to be the highest traffic demand periods.
And those were taken, I'm sorry, in the past year during COVID?
So the application was submitted in 2020. So the actual study results would have been from 2019.
Okay.
So it would have been pre-COVID.
Okay, assuming prior to March. And then would short-term rentals be allowed, like Airbnb at the condos, or would there be rules and regulations that would prohibit that from occurring?
So, I mean, that's entirely up to the condominium corporation. I know a lot of condos do put in rules to prevent that. On the town end of things, we don't have any policies regulating short-term rentals currently. I'm not sure if it is something that we're going to be looking into. It hasn't really came up as too much of a concern so far for the town. But the condo corporation itself could limit that.
Having personally lived in a 50-story condo downtown, it was definitely a concern having lived there. And so I would stress that that does become a concern going forward. And last question, anticipated construction cycle, just the noise impact. I saw that you had a noise study done, but the construction cycle, again, is it going to be 1 year, 2 years, in which will be impacted by the noise?
So I'm not sure of the construction details at this stage. I don't know if anyone truly is. Are you able to? Yeah.
I mean, I was just to say, obviously we're still in the planning review phase. So there's still a fair bit of time and review and work to go through that side of things in the planning phase. But Stuart, I don't know if you have just a general idea of once construction did start, you know, how long might something like this take? Is it 2 years? Is it a year? Like on past examples?
We allow for 18-month construction cycle.
And are there time limitations during the day in which construction takes place?
Yeah, so the town of Ajax has a noise bylaw and that regulates construction. So in the weekdays, it's the longer. Off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure. I think it's like 7 a.m. to maybe 7 p.m. On Saturdays, it's shorter, and then on Sundays, it's not permitted. So we do have our own kind of regulations to enforce to ensure that kind of noise and that protection.
Okay, thank you. That's all for me.
Thank you, Nadine. Next person is Kim. Kim, you should be able to unmute and ask your question.
Okay. Okay, my question is on the top, I heard something about on the top of one of the condos that there would be, you would have a relaxing area or a barbecue, and you could have, I would imagine, rent it out and have parties and that up there?
Well, it's not in the top. Cliff Corman here, responding to that question. At the ground floor level, we have the entrance lobby and in a small amenity area, and we drive into an underground covered parking. And the next level up, the whole covered parking is a landscape podium, one level above grade, which is the inner courtyard, which was the last slide that I showed in my carousel of pictures. That is a landscaped open space, open only to the members of the building, the condominium association. It's a private open space for the owners of the building.
Eric, do you want to, sorry, I was going to say, do you want to put that slide up? Eric, would that help? Just to refresh our visual.
From your presentation?
Yes.
Well, I think even or yours, because you on your site plan you had in your presentation, you can see the area of the courtyard that Cliff's talking about.
Yeah, just one sec.
So you could stop here. So that green space, which has the gazebo at the west end, is the interior landscape. For the building, it's actually almost at grade, covered amenity, landscaped open space for the owners of the building. It is not visible to the street. It's not visible to the residential area. It is bounded on 3 sides by the 3-story stacked townhouses, by the L-shaped apartment building, and open to the west, which is the environmentally sensitive area in the forestry. So that is, in the sense, at grade to the units.
Where people have their backyards.
Well, there are landscape terraces at grades. Instead of a balcony, they get a little courtyard, but that's a privately accessible space for owners of the building to walk out
Okay,
and use.
see what I'm saying?
What are you saying?
That it's gonna create noise. There's gonna be noise there, especially in the summer.
And the noise is trapped within the building envelope on 3 sides.
You know, some of my questions have already been asked, but I mean, just a couple of comments. First of all, and people have all touched on this, 8 floors is, nobody's happy about that. You know, 6 floors is bad enough, but 8 floors just is over the top. You know, and the thing about our houses are going to improve in value is bull. There is no way that our houses, the value of our homes are going to improve because we've got this condo and stacked townhouse down the street from us.
Okay,
That's just a comment I want to make. Did you have a question?
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
Hello, it's Vince Chisinski, Kim's husband. I just want to touch on what Nadine started about this height compatibility and 45-degree angular plane section. I read through the the planning rationale report, and the only reference they give you, and the only reference is the 241 Lake driveway. All right, and they're worried about privacy, light, and view concerns. But there's no mention in the report at all about any other residents on Lake Driveway or residents on Kipling or Walker. And in fact, all the other streets in the neighborhood will also be visually impacted. So that report really is, it's not really, it's a bit flawed and very weak. Plus, the other thing I have is 45-degree angular plane. In my estimation, that just seems like an arbitrary criteria. Like when you drew that diagram, that 45-degree looked like it could accommodate a 20-story building, right? So I think it would be nice to, if the planning rationale addressed, the concerns of people right across the street and on Walker Crescent, which I feel would be more visually impacted than 241. The other comment I have is just west of the development are walking trails, all right, which are a great source of pride in Ajax. Now, it's a trail along Duffins Creek and also Duffins Creek itself. Like I do a lot of walking back there. And over the year, there's thousands of people that walk, canoe, and kayak along the river. Now, the last couple of years, the traffic has increased significantly. For the most part, all we see is trees, various forms of vegetation, water. This 8-story complex is going to spoil the view and ambiance for sure.
Of a lot of people who go, not just the few, it's like you're, okay.
Yeah, but anyway, it's the few. So anyway, there's a lot of people that are doing that. Like it's fairly reasonable to expect that one of the selling points of the upper floors of this new building would be the view. And what I'm saying is spoiling the view and ambiance for hundreds, if not thousands of hikers and paddlers to benefit a handful of new residents is really not right.
okay, I want to.
Yeah. Okay.
We've got about 12 people with their hands up right now, and we've got an hour in the webinar. Is that we go?
Just quickly, okay, just last point. One quick point is intensification. Now, intensification is mentioned at least a dozen times in this report. And one thing that isn't mentioned is just south of the proposed site is about 400 meters site is the Hamptons, located around 189 to 195 Lake Driveway, which has 285 condominium units, right? So the proposed addition of 178 units in the already intensified area is unreasonable as far as I can see.
Okay, thank you, Kim and Vince. We've made note of those comments.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I'm now going to go to William. William, you should be able to unmute and ask your question.
Yes, good evening. Given the number of people waiting, I'll make this quick. So I just had a couple of comments. To the developer, I'd be very interested in examples of projects that you guys have completed and the impact on property values in the area. If you guys could provide that maybe to the town, and then they can provide that to the residents, that would be wonderful. And then another comment, I have some serious concerns about the parking. I understand you are trying to get the okay from the town to move from 1.5 parking spots per unit to 1 parking spot per unit. And you've cited a couple of studies that were done. I really don't think a study done in Whitby at 200 Garden Street and 552 Dundas, which are lower income rentals, in comparison to what you're building, which is a higher income condo. I really don't think that that's a very accurate study. I'm very concerned about the parking and then the bleed over into the neighborhood. If there are not enough parking spots, people will be parking on side streets or probably in the plaza. I just want to make sure that everyone on the call is aware of this. They should probably Google 200 Garden Street. The first thing that comes up are bed bug studies. So you're not comparing apples to apples is my point. And obviously I don't think that 1 spot per unit is going to be sufficient. I really think the town needs to seriously consider not granting that change. That's really all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, William.
It was fake. That's what I want. Yeah, that's what I want.
Someone has their, okay, there we go, microphone off. Next person is Al. Al, you should be able to unmute and ask your question.
Okay, hi. Angie and myself live across the street from this project. I have numerous concerns. I have been here for some time now, and I've heard some of the other proposed developments. So I have a few challenges for both the city, or sorry, the town of Ajax and the developer. One, privacy is huge. I understand that, yes, you have used this proposed 45-degree or whatever value and for considering the privacy issue. I might propose or would challenge the city to prove what it's going to look like. The technology exists now. I'm sorry to say that you could put together a drone study and take everybody and show everybody a picture of what it's going to look from each corner, every balcony on this property. I've heard concerns, the question asked that was totally
For stimulating job you have.
and not answered. Please don't interrupt. I'm going to go through my 6 points, please, and then you can answer. So with that said, privacy, density, I've heard that mentioned.
People,
Please,
I don't know, people are they're so freaked out by condominiums, right?
so I'm not sure who's speaking over top of me.
Doing in the backyard.
I see the regional council coming up. Not sure who's over speaking me. So privacy, density, parking, traffic, noise. The privacy is certainly going to have to be proved to the neighborhood what it's going to look like from each balcony, and especially those large open spaces on the rooftop on the 6th floor, to which I also heard somebody say, could they be used for a party? I can certainly see that it would be. Also, the driveway is going to become an issue, and the parking. Everybody knows that down on Ajax Lake Driveway, they already have a problem at the park with people spilling over. The density level is huge down here on Lake Driveway. And we're caught in the middle. We've already had a vehicle hit in our driveway from people excessive speed, and it throttles down from 4 lanes to 2 lanes right when it gets to this property, just before, and we're caught in the middle. The other concern that I have is the zoning. That's great that you've allowed for and can only allow for 8 stories if you get this zoning approved, to which I couldn't consider why, just for the pure end of profit is the only reason you can go 8 stories when you can join the 2 properties together. The wetlands has to be considered. There's family of deer there every year now, right in front of my house all the time. And another animals and birds that use that property, use the land. I had to take issue with that. Like I said, 253 is low density housing, just what I have right across from this proposed project. I also, I'm sorry to say, would ask and challenge the builder to actually prove that it's going to bring up, and I know that they changed the wording of it's not going to decrease the, they specifically said it's going to increase the property value of the community, not the property value of the people who are directly adjoined or right across the street, or where their privacy is going to be affected. Those property values are going to drop. We all know they're going to drop. I've been recommended to knock your sign down and possibly list my house for sale. But any proposed development is something that I'm going to look very carefully at, and it is going to affect my property. It's going to affect my privacy. It's going to affect the noise and the safety. There's no crosswalk. There's another challenge I have for the city. I'm sorry, there's a problem now with pedestrian traffic walking across the street with no crosswalk, no slow down lanes, no rumble strips, nothing. And you have a very difficult time now getting off of Lake Driveway onto Westney because of the traffic. So again, please reconsider this project. You know, I'm sorry, I would object to, you know, 8 stories is something that, sure, it sounds, you know, something that belongs in on a different property. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Al. We are going to go to the next, Pam and George. You should be able to unmute and ask your question.
Hello.
Hi.
I have, we first want to express our concern with the 8 stories. It is severely going to impact the neighborhood and the surrounding area. And when we were out today, we were, you know, kind of envisioning, and it is going to, you know, it is very high. I want to reiterate the concern about the parking. Lake Driveway and Vale and the adjoining streets are under a lot of pressure already, predominantly seasonal pressure, but still. And we enjoy seeing people enjoying the conservation area and everything, but that's very different than people parking on the street or in the plaza because they don't have enough parking in their place of residence. I'm a little concerned because we read the amendment, the proposal last night, but there appears to be some differences that I'm confused about. The proposal said condo, but throughout this presentation, I've heard the word condo and rental or apartment used interchangeably, and they're not the same thing. So I wanted to express a concern about that. That should be well established before we move forward, in our opinion. I also want to clarify another thing. In the proposal I read last night, it said 53% would be one bedroom and one bedroom plus den. So the combination would be 53. But I think on the slides that we were shown, that is less. Am I correct in that?
Cliff, I don't know if you, sorry, it's Scott here. Cliff, I
Hi.
don't know if you can clarify the unit mix. Because I think there was a slide previously that had that up there in our presentation.
As
You
the,
did.
as we can bring that slide up, but as the project has proceeded along, the market mix has been changing, and we have less one bedrooms and more two bedrooms now. So the slide we showed you is the current plan.
Okay, so the current plan now is 36% one bedroom.
Correct.
And I can't remember what it was for two bedroom, but so the ratio of one bedroom has now decreased. Right?
Cliff, you're muted. Please unmute yourself.
Trying to unmute. The answer is yes.
Okay.
Reduce
All
the
right. So the other thing we want to express is that we remember the conversations at the Ajax Town Council over the last 30 some odd years regarding this parcel of land. And the official plan has it designated basically in support of the low density residential, which is the neighborhood all in throughout the Discovery Bay. So the uses, as far as we have been aware of all this time, have been, you know, a medical clinic. I think that was discussed at one time, a seniors residence. And I know that there was an application for a seniors residence. It was withdrawn, and I was kind of wondering about that. And my comment is that this proposal is not in the spirit of what the official plan always intended for this piece of property. The demographics in the area are changing. There are younger families moving in, et cetera. And this proposal has also eliminated any possibility of support services, you know, the commercial that would be on the ground floor. So that is a comment I want to make. But the other comment is that there was a mention of this market is demanding or showing a need for smaller units for seniors, et cetera. And you can't dictate that seniors purchase them. However, a mixed use that maybe contains some medical center, et cetera, may attract people that are looking for, you know, seniors that are looking, as you say, one floor, but have amenities very close. But the 8 stories, that's a real problem as far as we're concerned. Do you have anything else?
No, I'm not really.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my comments.
Okay, thank you. We are now going to move on to Francis. Francis, you should be able to unmute and ask your question.
Yes, I have. Thank you. My question is with regard to the environmental assessment and with the protection of the woodland area. I read the environmental assessment, which appears to have been done on the 17th of January last year. And I'm just wondering on the validity of an assessment done in the dead of winter. I didn't find anything particularly disturbing about it, except some of the wildlife. It didn't note deer, which are, as someone else has mentioned, quite prevalent in that area. There are a lot of deer. They've been in the Discovery Bay Plaza parking lot before. So there are deer there which weren't mentioned at all. And also the vegetation pretty much was covered by snow last January the 17th. So I'm just questioning the dating of doing an environmental assessment on the area. The other question I have, which you can address at the same time, is with regard to putting in the buffer zone, is the intention to have it fenced? So I'm not quite sure if that solid line that's showing on the screen now at the edge of that buffer zone is intended to be fencing, or just showing the buffer zone.
I can answer that. So the EIS, it's kind of going to be a phased EIS. We only received the first phase of it, and that's because in the second phase, they're going to have to evaluate the wetland. So I believe that's already been done if they're going to be in a position to make their second submission, but I can confirm that that wouldn't have been done in the winter. But the Conservation Authority did receive the EIS. They did review it. There were no specific concerns about the validity of it or when it was undertaken. With respect to the woodlot, the fencing is entirely up to the Conservation Authority. Typically, they do require some form of like chain link fencing around that buffer boundary, but that will be a requirement that's on their end.
So that's to the Conservation Authority to do that, not part of the design of the site.
The developer would ultimately be responsible for providing it,
Right.
but the call of whether to provide it or not is from the TRCA.
Okay, so if that decking area that we're looking at, the public space in the middle with the gazebo, is open and is not fenced, then you'll have deer in there, you'll have coyotes in there, you'll have everything in there. So I would suggest that a point is made of that. It wasn't in that initial assessment, but that area, as has been noted, lots of people use that trail through there, and there are lots of deer and coyotes in there, and I think it should be fenced if this is going ahead. So it's not just squirrels.
Okay, thank you very much, Francis. And we are going to the next person, Sarah Reed. We have two Sarahs. Sarah Reed, you should be able to unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, I've got some concerns that have already been brought up as well. The 8 stories is a big concern. A number of years ago, when they were doing a proposed development there on the site for the seniors residence, it had been zoned at 5 stories, I believe, and then they put through an amendment for 6, and now we're going up to 8. It's ridiculous. The Hamptons, I think, are only 4, and they fit into the neighborhood much better. 8 is just going to be way over the top, in my opinion. Parking, huge issue. You're allowing out of 170, say, units at 0.25 visitor spots per unit. So that's roughly 42 visitor spots for that whole section of units. Where's everyone else going to park? If one unit decides to have a party in that courtyard, where are they going to park? I'm on Walker Crescent. I don't need them all parking there or at the plaza or walking through the neighborhood. We've already had parties on other side streets where people were parking at the plaza. Again, it's going to be noisy. They're going to be, if they're having a party in the barbecue area courtyard, it's going to affect the green space, the wildlife, scaring the animals away. Privacy, if it's 8 stories, like what Nadine was mentioning, like they're going to be looking straight down at us. I really like the idea of someone putting up the drone and getting the actual bird's eye view. Traffic. Usually before the pandemic, me trying to get out to go to work between 7:30 and 7:45, all the traffic whipping up Lake Driveway. It was hard for me to get out on Walker. Now you're going to have 170 units trying to get out to the traffic light? Are you gonna put stop signs, speed bumps, something so that side streets can get out? Because it's really hard to get out when people are coming around the corner. It's a blind corner. It's a safety issue. And you can't tell, people just whip along. So you need a traffic light, something to break up the traffic. And with all this construction going on, are we going to be able to go down that little path right now that's right against the last house to get into the wooded area? Is that going to be blocked off? And I'm really concerned about the effect it's going to have on the woodland area. I've taken pictures of deer right behind where Trelawney Newton is this past fall. There was a doe and her fawn, and down the back paths, I see deer all the time. You know, they're all affected. And like someone else said, they do use that field and area. It's not just, you know, squirrels. So I'm quite concerned about what kind of impact this is going to have on the area and the environment. And somebody mentioned an EIS. Could someone explain what an EIS is, please?
Yes, sorry, that's the environmental impact study.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Sarah, thank you very much for your comments. I'll be moving on now to Sandra. Sandra, you should be able to unmute and ask your question.
Hi there, thanks for taking our questions. And my husband, John, is here with me as well. We live very close to the proposed property on the same side of the street as 241, which I guess is the property that butts up against the trail. I do want to reiterate everything that Pam and George did say. I think, Pam, you did most of the speaking, but certainly the 8 stories is a huge concern to us. We would reiterate the same things that other people have talked about in terms of privacy and the sheer number of units in that small parcel of land, which includes the parking as well as everything that other people have also mentioned. I wanted to ask a question, if you could please clarify for me, and I'm sorry that we've had the gentleman who was speaking, Mr. Corman, about the composition of the units and the numbers of bedrooms or whatever is important. I still don't have a clear answer of what that looks like, the breakdown of 3 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms and 1+ den and all of that kind of stuff, which would be helpful. Could you clarify that for me, please?
Yes, I can. I think I just want to double check on the slide. I believe we were showing 36% 1 bedroom and dens, 10% 3 bedroom, and the balance 54% were 2 bedroom.
Okay, 54% for 2 bedroom. Okay, thank you. That's helpful because you spoke really quickly and I didn't catch that. I had another question also about Eric, when you were speaking about the traffic survey and you talked about like 48 extra trips in and out. Could you please just, it seems very low. I don't know how you came up with those numbers in terms of how that was assessed. And I just couldn't see that it would only, when you said it would be low, the impact of that many more buildings with that many more cars, that it wouldn't have an impact on our street, as the last person mentioned about it being blind and trying to get in and out of here on a road that only services this particular community. That's challenging. So,
yeah, I'm sorry, it's John here as well. I'm going to jump in and say there's 178 units in there. Most dwellings are 2-car families now. So you're going to double that at least. So you're over 350 additional cars going up and down this road. As previous residents have mentioned, that the traffic along this road is high, especially on weekends when people are using the park. People speed down this road, that's a 40, and they're generally doing 70 to 80 at the top end of this street, and they slow down as they get closer to the lake. So there's a an extreme concern of that
Congestion, yeah.
congestion, that blind corner, that's a safety issue for sure. We live on Lake Driveway. We struggle to back out of our driveway because people don't slow down. They don't take their time to allow us in and out of our driveway. Never mind the additional cars that you're adding to this. So I'm going to let you answer Sandra's question, and then I'm going to jump in for a couple more.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the town isn't the one that did this survey. That's what was received. The consultant prepared this study. So the numbers in it looks at the peak hours. It's not saying that that's the total amount of traffic. That's just saying if you were to look at the AM peak and the PM peak, so like at rush hour, that's how many additional vehicle trips it's expected to generate.
Yeah, you said something like 48. Or I think that needs to be revisited, because if you live here, you would know that that is not the truth.
That's not for the entire area. That's just for this development is what it's saying.
Okay,
It's
but
not
only
saying-
48
yeah.
extra more trips in and out. I
Yeah.
think I remember you
That's
saying
what it-
48, and I was like, come on, that's just
No, yeah.
possibly be. But anyway, okay. So John just has a couple more comments.
Yeah, you know, everyone is concerned about the value of their property. They're concerned about the privacy of their property. We back onto the Greenlands. We paid extra. We paid a premium for this property
And
for the privacy. And now you're going to put up an 8-story building that looks right into our backyard. So everything that we put our money into is now being taken away by this. So it is concerning. And I believe it was Councillor Crawford that said these people get freaked out about a condo. Maybe A, she should mute, and B, if this condo was being built next to your house, you might feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
This is concerning. You know, this is our livelihood. We've invested all our money in these houses. This is our biggest purchase of our lives. And then for something to come in and reduce the value of our properties, reduce the privacy of our properties, and cause this, we have a right to be concerned about it. Absolutely. So, you know, if we're getting freaked out, we have a right to be freaked out. That's really disturbing that you would say that.
Okay, thank you. I think we've taken up enough time for now. Thanks for hearing our concerns.
Okay, thank you very much. We have about a half hour left. We have 5 more people with their hands up. So it's possible that we can get to everyone. If you kindly keep your questions and comments concise. So next is Rebecca. Rebecca, you should be able to unmute and ask your question.
Yes, hello. Thank you for the presentation. I've listened to what everybody's saying. I think the underlying theme here is the 8-story proposal. I mean, I don't think there's any going back on building here, but when I first heard that it was going to be built on, I thought of the Hamptons and I thought of that 4 stories, and this 8 stories would be the highest building on Lake Driveway, and I think the 8 is a real concern for everybody. It is for me, and with the privacy issues also. And this was it's supposed to be like a low-rise residential area years ago. So I think you know, nobody should be surprised that everybody is a little bit concerned about this. And so I want it noted there that I do feel that 8 stories is too much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rebecca. Next, we have Larry. Larry, you should be able to unmute and ask your question.
Looking up Lake driveway to the east. So from the Hamptons towards the plaza. It's always been a bad blind spot on that corner. My wife and I have had a few close calls trying to cross that road as there is no sidewalk on the side that this proposed development's going to be on. So everybody that doesn't have a car will have to cross that road to get to the sidewalk, to go to the park, or to say, go to Sobeys or something, anywhere other than Giant Tiger Plaza there. That's going to be a really big concern. As for the speed, we've been complaining about the speed on this road for 10 years now, and nobody seems to do a darn thing about it. As the previous speaker said, 40 turns into 60 and 70, and a lot of times they're lasting up there at near 80 kilometers an hour. And you're going to add probably at least another 100 cars to the mix here. I think it's a serious concern with that. The other thing is, it's a beautiful looking building and a beautiful drawing. It's just in completely the wrong place. When I moved into this town here 38 years ago, I specifically moved down here because it was all low density. We lived over on the other side of Finley for a number of years before moving on to Lake Driveway. It's got continually busier on the road, but the density of the housing and even the Hamptons was really not considered high density. This to me is going to be high density when you're starting to put 200 plus people onto that little footprint. And I don't think it was ever intended to be like that in the town's official plan. I can't see why the town is proposing to change the bylaws now to accommodate this. There's surely are other properties around that would fit this this situation where it's zoned more appropriately. Thanks for taking the time.
Okay, Larry, thank you very much for your comments. Next, we have Danny. Danny, you can unmute yourself. There you go.
Hi, yeah. I'd just like to echo some of the comments that we heard earlier today around parking. You know, I live one of the streets off Lake Driveway, and come, April, May, and up until October, the street is filled with cars that are coming to the park, and just, adding another, a mid-rise condo with so many units, and all their friends and guests who are going to be coming to visit them. I don't think, we'll be able to get around in this neighborhood with the amount of cars and traffic that we are going to see. And also the traffic that, I think somebody else mentioned too. I think south of Bailey, Westney turns into just two lanes, and it's already with trucks and all the other vehicles. It's I don't feel safe driving, and with the addition of all these new vehicles, I think it's just going to be even more difficult. And I think I think what others said, 8-story building in this, I don't think it's a good fit compared to what's here. And that's one of the reasons that I moved from Toronto to Ajax. It just I loved the low density and just the nature and everything, and I just don't think that it's a right fit to have a 8-story building. So that's just my comment. That just pretty much what everyone else has been sharing today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Danny. We do have just under 25 minutes. And we have 2 more people with their hands raised. So if there are others who wish to ask questions live, oh, there we go. We've got a bunch of hands raised now. So the next person we will go to is Paul. You can unmute yourself now, Paul.
Am I unmuted?
Yep, you're good.
Good. Okay, there's a lot of questions that were answered. There's a lot of concerns that were brought up. One of the things that I'm kind of concerned about is the schooling system as well. Because when my kids were going to school, we had quite a bit of a problem with being overclassed for the school. It developed for the schools were developed for the people that are here. If you're adding more to the community, will that be overdoing it for the schooling system? Is there anybody
So, yeah, so as part of the development review process, we do circulate to the school boards. That's Durham District Catholic and just normal Durham District School Board. And I believe we only got comments back from the Durham District School Board, but they did not indicate any issues or capacity concerns.
Okay, fair enough. One of my biggest concerns is actually the wildlife part of this. We've been here in South Ajax since 1994. We moved there in 2003. We've always enjoyed this this backyard that we live in. You guys talk about, for instance, the environmental impact on it. When you develop more people into an area, the wildlife moves out. Basically, that's what it is. Or it dies off or do not develop the way that it does in a natural area, I guess. That's one of my biggest concerns. We do have deer. They come in our backyards. We do have coyotes. We do have fox and rabbits and squirrels and everything else that come through here. Once you overpopulate the area, that area is going to move away. As simple as that. That's just a concern. That's not a question or anything. With the 8 story, you can do that 45-degree angle. You can do that angle all you want, but I go out in my backyard, I can see giant tiger from where I'm standing to. I'm 7 houses down, and you put a area in or a building into an area that is, overlooking all of these areas in the backyard, none of us are going to feel very comfortable. It's as simple as that. That there is just a concern. Now, and that's just basically what that comes down to, is a concern. One of my things is, you guys done a traffic assessment in December of 2019. Most people out around here actually is involved in construction area, which basically dies off in either October or November. I know that because I deal with it every day. When you're doing traffic assessment, it should be done in the prime area, not when it's, like in December, January, February, when there is a lot less traffic on the go. You could even look at the 401 and that aspect of it. Why was this done in December opposed to somewhere like in the prime peak? Can anybody answer that or no?
So the traffic study wasn't just done at one time. Like when they generate results for existing, they look at the existing data, like from the region, for traffic counts and everything. There may have been instances where they did look at, a specific date as an example. I can't recall if it was December specifically.
It was December 9th and the 10th, yeah.
Okay, and that was for what specifically?
For the amount of traffic that's flowing through Lake Drive.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Eric, I just maybe add a little bit. Yeah, they may have done some traffic counts, excuse me, at a certain time or a certain period. The only thing I would add is they go through a phased approach to this. I know when they do these reports, they certainly do reach out to municipal and regional transportation traffic folks, to develop a terms of reference and try and determine from them the parameters of what's to be studied, when it's to be studied, etc. So I do know that work is done up front. The only thing I would just add is that, as kind of Eric said before, these reports are under review by both the town and the region. I'm sure there'll be further assessment as part of our next submission. So just some additional context as part of the traffic work.
Okay, because I know a lot of people brought it out out already that with the traffic that is there, we've been trying to get, even with the councils and everything, to get the traffic to slow down in this area. We cannot get it slowed down. This is one of the main arteries that go through, which we kept being told is one of the main arteries that go through South Ajax. So you got Finley, you got Irwood, and you got Lake Driveway. These are the main arteries that flow through this area. So the problem is they cannot put speed bumps in, they can't put the stripes in, they can't put anything in because of fire trucks, police, and ambulance, because this is one of the main arteries. If you clog up that artery, if you put in a light or if you add more traffic to it, it's going to cause a big problem, because right now there's nothing to be done to slow the traffic down, which is a huge problem. I've thrown rocks at people who drove by my house at 70, 80 kilometers an hour because they do not care. They see this before they get to the turn to go around that area that you guys are developing. That's when they start to slow down. If they're coming from south to north, that's where they start to slow down. When they start to slow down there, how many people are going to be coming out walking across the road from that development that you guys are developing? How many people is going to get it? How many people is going to get ran over? Because nobody cares anymore about the traffic control there. And there's nothing they can do, mainly because of it's a main artery for the ambulance, police, and the fire department. So I do have concerns. I do have concerns about people looking into my backyard. If I could see giant tiger from where I am, they could definitely see, like the neighbor that is actually right next to you guys who got a pool and everything. How many people is going to be looking over at that pool? They can't have anything like that. So I don't know. That's just a concern. That's not a question or anything. So I'm just putting that out there as a concern. And I think the only other thing is we definitely pay premium for taxes here. Would our taxes go down? I don't know. That's nothing to do with you guys. That's more or less to do with the city, I guess, or the town. So anyway, that's my concerns.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. Next, we have Matthew, and we have about 15 minutes left for the open house. Matthew, go ahead.
Hi there, thank you. It's Matthew Milligan from 940 Finley, and I just have a question about the parking. There's a number of 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units here, and that would suggest to me that potentially these units are going to be occupied by more than 2 people. Could be 3, 4, maybe even more. With 1 parking spot per unit, I have some concerns about that. How do you envision, I'd like to hear from the developer, how do you envision if I was in your sales pavilion and came and learned I was going to have 1 parking spot, what would you tell me about my transportation options if that 1 car that was associated with my household was not there?
Stuart, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but and I think obviously the proposed parking of 1 space per unit that would, obviously be communicated through the salespeople in terms of that's what's available per unit, for this development. I don't know if you had anything more to expand on that.
No, Scott, I don't have any comment. I'm going to rely on our consultants to advise me as to the parking ratio required.
So this is pretty disappointing. I mean, I would have expected that you as a developer would be aware of what the transit infrastructure is in the local area. Certainly in South Ajax, we've seen big cuts to transit coming through the main streets. Westney is not a great, I mean, there is a bus that goes to the GO station. Everything is centered around the GO station, at least on Lake Driveway. The buses are few and far in between. I mean, there has been, as I understand it, an uptick in bus traffic on Bailey and on Highway 2, but you have to get there. And this is a concern. So I believe that there's not enough parking on site. There's too many units, and something has to be done to reflect that. The proposal needs to be adjusted because let's face it, there's not going to be rapid transit on Westney anytime soon. There's not enough transit infrastructure. People are not riding their bicycles. I mean, we have great bicycle infrastructure in Ajax. It's great to go out there, ride a bike for pleasure, but we're certainly not seeing on Harwood and all the bike lanes out there, people in a big way, in a way that's making a big difference. Get off the road. And so I think you're going to see concerns with parking around this area based on the allotted parking spaces. And those are the comments that I would make now, and certainly look forward to providing those written comments at the public meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Matthew. Okay, we have about 10 minutes left, and two people who have yet to speak, Joanne and David. I think we can get you both in within the 10 minutes. So Joanne, you should be able to unmute and ask your question.
Yes, actually, I'm Joanne's husband, Stephen.
Okay.
I don't really have much of a question for development. I think the display was just, and the presentation certainly answered a lot of questions, and not to reiterate any of the questions and concerns that have already been mentioned, but more to the traffic issue. And my question isn't really to the developer or the designer, it's more to the councillor and mayor. Traffic in the area has been problematic in the past and currently is. 8 o'clock in the morning, the lineup of cars at the light at Lake Ridge and Lake Drive, sorry, and Westney lines up sometimes almost, to the entrance into the Giant Tiger. Is there any measures that they can be proactive to put in place to slow the traffic flow and to help reduce the speed of the cars on Lake Driveway, such as stop signs, maybe further back near Vale or even Kipling, just to slow cars down so that it would give a better chance for egress to and from the building, as well as the streets in the immediate area. And that question would be towards to the councillor and mayor.
I'm not sure if the mayor's still on. It's Joanne Dyes. So we do have, through the planning department, we do look at traffic issues, and we have a process that we do go through. And I know that over time, we have looked at Lake Driveway a few times, but it would have to go to the traffic analyst to do a further study. If you've seen an increase in traffic and changes, then they would have to do some further studying, not just this particular site, but on Lake Driveway itself, to see what's really happening and what the options would be. So the queuing, that's one of the things you mentioned, was the queuing to get onto Westney Road, and you feel that that's increased over time, then yes, we can have a look at that and see what our options are to relieve that. I hope that
Just-
helps.
Yeah, no, it's more, I understand it does help, but I think you've heard enough from enough people here that spoke about this. I have a sneaky suspicion this has been an ongoing issue, and with the building of this size going in right close to the lights that are currently there, can we act before, put some measures in place before the construction starts?
Well, I would think that you've got a couple of years really before, or more, before anything really happens, any residents are in place on that site. So there is some time that we can ask, we can go through the planning department to see if they can take a look at it.
And just to add that there have been speed boards put on Lake Driveway.
Yeah.
I think they do it a couple times. I know in the spring they did it.
What are they?
last year,
Would
so-
you say speed boards?
Speed boards along closer to Rotary Park area along the lake right down at the bottom.
Okay.
We put speed boards there through the Road Watch program and through the town's transportation department as well.
Yeah,
to collect
but
the
that,
data for speed.
I understand. I've seen those before, but they won't put them from just north of there to where that curve is. They say that those speed boards don't work. So is there any other measure we can put in? A stop sign, I think, would work well because it would stop people. People would have to stop for it. It's also not unusual for cars to pass another car on that road because the rate of speed is.
It's my understanding that speed boards do take some data as well, so that we can compare later on. It's difficult. Like, we're seeing an increase in problems throughout the town for speeding, and it's really, really difficult. And I know Lake Drive is kind of wide open. I know it's a problem. It has been for some time.
Yeah, but
We
you'll
have
never
looked at it.
receive- sorry, you won't obtain any data because they can't put the speed boards in that one particular area because of the curve in the road. That's what I've been told before.
Okay.
So the data that would be you collect in the south part would not be the same as you would collect up in that
Sure.
area. Two curves out.
Okay. All right. We'll note that. Thank you, and take it to the department to see what we can do.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that, Stephen.
There's the mayor.
We have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to go to David. David, you should be able
Yep.
to.
Thank you. Question 1, what is the best way to reduce the number of units? Number 2, to increase the number of vehicles per unit. And number 3, to ensure that the proper procedures are going to be followed to minimize the impact.
I think perhaps maybe that's more of a statement,
No,
David.
I'm asking what is the best way to ensure that the concerns expressed here are actually going to be enacted and dealt with so that we reduce the number of stories to go down. The clear message coming across is that this is too tall. Number 2, that it has too many units, so that needs to be reduced. And number 3, that the number of parking places should be reduced. I'm asking what's the best way to ensure that these things in fact are acted upon so that we see the reduction that is necessary.
I mean, at the end of the day, the developer can propose what they want to propose. That doesn't mean the town has to accept it. So we've all heard your concerns now. So has the developer. But what they ultimately choose to change, that's up to them.
And
Eric, this isn't site plan, is it?
it's OPA and zoning bylaws. So both these applications right now will be going to council for their decision.
I just want to point out quickly that this is not a site plan application. This is just zoning and bylaws. So this is a concept. This is not an actual application that this is the thing. This is a concept that's just being put forward of what it could look like. And that's why we go through the public process to hear from the residents, get that information. Staff will formulate a report and report back to council at a later date. So this is just part of the process, but there's no decisions being made today, but all this information is very valuable. And I just wanted, now that we're at the end, to thank everybody for taking the time tonight to give their input. And we are listening, and it will all form part of the final report. Thank you.
Thank you. And I take it then that if the current proposals of changing the designation of the land use is stopped, then we solve the problem. Would that be correct?
Eric, would you like to explain the process and the?
Yeah, so any property owner is allowed to submit an application to redesignate the lands or rezone the lands. That's what the owner, the developer, has proposed. So we're considering what they have proposed. Part of considering it is reviewing all the materials as well as hearing what the public has to say. So we're just going through the development review process. At the end of the day, staff will make a recommendation to council on what's been proposed, and council will make a decision.
And at this point, what is the recommendation that you see us coming down?
There is no recommendation. This is in the early stages of the review process. Right now, we're trying to obtain input from the public.
Okay, so the concerns that are expressed here tonight will be taken into account. And is there any further way to emphasize these concerns?
I mean, everyone's entitled to keep sending comments. There's the IMO page you can send comments to. You can send comments to myself. But no, I mean, I think we've gotten the gist of what the concerns are here.
Right.
And we're going to have to consider everything.
Right.
There
Okay,
is.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, David. There is also an opportunity when these applications do go to the planning committee for residents to speak at that meeting as well. Okay, so we are almost at 9 o'clock, so I am going to wrap it up. I do know that we have two more people that do have their hands up. John and Al, you have had the opportunity to address questions live. So to keep this webinar on time, I ask that any additional comments you have, please, as Eric was saying, submit them in writing on the town's IMO project page for these applications, or submit them to Eric in writing via email. His contact information is on that IMO project page. I just want to thank everyone for taking the time out this evening to join us here to learn about this proposed development and to share your comments and feedback. I want to thank town staff, council, the developers and their consultants for their time and presentation this evening. And I want to thank all the attendees as well for sharing your feedback. We have noted your comments, and as Eric has noted, we will be bringing a report forward with our recommendations sometime in the future. And again, at that meeting, there will be an opportunity for public input. So I want to say thank you again, everyone, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.